Welcome to the show today. My name is Douglas Gabriel, and I'm here with John Barnwell, and we are discussing another book in our series from the works of Dr. Rudolf Steiner. And this one is called Grappling with Evil, subtitled Conquering Fear and Anxiety. So thanks for joining with me today, John, to discuss this release of this new book in the series.
Well, and thank you so much for thinking of me in this somewhat circuitous adventure. And in working on your materials and the way in which you've been able to synthesize the difficult work of Rudolf Steiner is really a monumental task that really hasn't been done before. There's been little versions of synthesis that have been provided over the years, but there's never really been a comprehensive attempt to try and synthesize. So I really salute you and Tyler for having such an ingenious approach to the difficult work of Rudolf Steiner.
Well, as you know, we started about 10 years ago. People ask us to write articles after Tyler and I finished the Gospel of Sophia trilogy, and they ask us to write about modern things. Well, holy moly, as you know, if you've been following any of our videos on interviews with an exorcist, I have been grappling with evil all my life. I mean, I never got a chance to get away from it because I could witness it, not see it. Because remember, evil works through people. It isn't like you walk up and you see this big evil demon standing before you, even though a clairvoyant can see the evil demons. But here's where the demons really are. They're in the laws created by humans, and the things created by man-made things created in laboratories. Those are the most evil things there are. And as you know, people will say out there on the internet and with their conspiracy theories without providing evidence like we do, that the three sources of evil are the Vatican, the City of London, and Washington, D.C. Now, to a degree, that's somewhat true, and we're going to address some of those, but we'd much rather address what you yourself can do to address the second subtitle of this book, which is Conquering Fear and Anxiety. Who doesn't have fear and anxiety? So we're going to talk about that, the beings that create it, and also I could talk ad infinitum about the machinations of evil, but we'll try to give you the antidotes to them instead of just dwelling on the evil, because I think everybody out there knows that evil is having its day and that evil isn't hiding anymore. It's no longer invisible. You can see it everywhere you look.
Absolutely. And I think the real key in unlocking the treasures, really, that Rudolf Steiner has provided in his some 36 and a half feet of shelf space of his collected edition, that what we have there is something that's internally cohesive, that it's something that the longer you look at it, the more you realize how profoundly interconnected it is, but it's on a level of characterizations. It's not a bunch of definitions. But people are so accustomed to approaching things with definitions like evil and so forth that it constricts their thinking. It causes them to be sense bound. And the real dilemma as far as fear and anxiety is sense bound thinking, and that abstract materialism that really came into the forefront in the 1840s and increased from there on. And so we see all the major calamities that happened in world history as a result of that way of looking at the world. And that is very much something that's a reoccurring theme in history. But there are ways in which to look at this to which one can obtain a wholesome result. And so that's kind of what we'd like to get into today, because when you get into what Rudolf Steiner says, he says that the events that are considered evil are things that arise within the human realm.
So true, so true, and that has become very, very evident to me as I was preparing for this conference that Michael McKibben and I are going to this weekend, Eyes Wide Open, in Mount Pleasant, and basically the whole conference is focused on evil and the antidotes to it. I mean, literally, that would be a synthesis of what the speakers are going to be addressing. Now, from way back, all you had to do was just get me started, and I would tell you about so much evil in the world that you become so depressed that you would you would never want to speak to me again. And all of it would be true. And now I'm finding out that, unfortunately, truth is so hidden in today's age that we're in the post-truth age. We're in the age of what? Well, first off, we're in the age of my new phrase that I've stolen from someone is post-constitutional America. And people think we're in a democracy in America. There's no democracy whatsoever in America. We're a constitutional republic, and the Constitution has been abnegated. So therefore, if you want to talk about evil, all you have to do is go to where the power exists, where money flows, and you will find evil every single time. Why? Because we're not over the Old Testament challenges of Cain killing Abel, or Absalom wanting to kill his father, King David, or Abraham being willing to sacrifice his son Isaac, or Nebuchadnezzar throwing Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego into the fiery furnace. Right? I mean, this is just still going on. Human slavery, pedophilia, murdering of your brother, your sister, your mother, your father. As I was just telling, we were having a conversation in the airport, going to the airport yesterday. They've now taken out of almost all state capitals any reference or any statues to the Ten Commandments, and they've replaced it with Moloch, a demon. So it's okay to worship demons in the government, but it is not okay to even make reference to moral laws of a religion. No, you can't do that anymore. And you certainly can't talk about God. And religions have been targeted. And when I say that Vatican is the source of evil, in this book, Grappling with Evil, we explain a certain stream of evil that there have been hundreds of books written about. And that's that people, certain monarchs, want to claim that they are the blood lineage of Christ so they can have total power and control over the world. But then so do imperialists, elitists, the Pilgrim Society, all these different groups, the United Nations. If you want to talk about the biggest group of evil, the largest conglomerate of evil in the world, it is the United Nations. You can't barely name a single good thing they've ever done, and yet we give them billions of dollars. If you want to talk about evil, you talk about the Washington District of Crime, where lying is legal. You do understand that. We've proven that to you. There are laws that say that all the branches of our government can all lie, but we as citizens can't lie. So we are living in an age when everything is topsy-turvy and where evil is no longer hiding. It used to be a good thing. Evil would hide, so you wouldn't know it existed, because why? Evil works through people. So we're going to tell you today about that. On your left and right ear, there's two different demons, completely quite different, trying to entice you into doing evil deeds. But if you stay in the middle, if you stay in your heart, if you stay in your higher self, where Christ should be on the throne of your heart, your higher self, then that evil can't control you. Because remember, these demons that we're going to talk about, they don't exist in this realm, but they work through human beings because they have fallen back in their evolution. And so they're still here, and they interpenetrate us with what's called heterochrony, or multiple layers of accretion of spiritual gifts, donations, and as well as what we call the fall from heaven. And all the beings, all of us, if there's someone out there that doesn't have evil in them, raise your hand, okay? Because we all have evil and we have good in us, to whatever measure it is that we've decided to allow it. So when we talk about evil, it gets me really worked up. And I just want to say that the solution is very simple. It's truth, beauty, and goodness. And I love the way that Ben Davison says in his show, where he talks about cataclysms coming from the sun every day. And he's like waiting for the sun to kill us every day. He's kind of disappointed when it doesn't. But at the end of his show, he always says, eyes open, no fear, be safe, everyone. That's thinking, feeling, and willing. Eyes open with your thinking that John just made reference to. Study spiritual science, study Steiner, study whatever spiritual path that is authentic to you. That's in your head. Then in your heart, to get rid of fear and anxiety, you need to have no fear. And as it says in 1 John 4:18, it says something to the effect of, well, basically, where there's love, there's no fear. Where there's fear, there's no love. That's the American version of it. But the point is yes, if you're afraid, it's because there's no love. And if you have no love, it means you have no faith, because the whole universe is nothing but love. It is a complex organism of love. Now, they would call it electricity, and Steiner said, when it comes to that, then we're really in trouble. But if you called it thought, all of this is thought of a God. Now, extract anything man-made, because mostly man-made stuff leads to evil. We're going to say more about that in the next talk. All electronic devices are evil. They hurt you. But everyone chooses their vice, and everyone can allow a certain amount of poison in their life. But if you don't know it's poison, then it is unconsciously controlling you and becoming your religion. So you are, like Francis Bacon warned us, worshiping idols, or as I like to say, you're worshiping the demons of Babylon, the same old demons that have been around forever, the 7 deadly sins. You all probably know what those are. And so when we're talking about evil, if you know what evil is, you can call it out and you can say, you have no power over me. As a matter of fact, I'm going to use the most powerful thing there is, which is the word love, or Christ, or Chinrezig, or whatever version of love you wish to use. The demons, especially the two that have literally the most control over us for basically since almost the beginning of human existence and before, those two, they don't see Christ. So if you have Christ, you have the ultimate victory over every single evil demon that there is, because no demon can come into you without you inviting them.
Absolutely. And it's important to understand that it's a necessary drama. And so what we have is when the universe comes into being, you can go back to the Mahabharata or the Puranas of ancient India, where it talks about how Vishnu is like the architect. He's like the early Stone Age description of Christ as this great creator being. And this is a being that works through the power of the word, as we know in the first 14 verses of the Gospel of John. But if you get into the Johannine scriptures, the books of John, you see he makes reference to something that he calls the paraclete, or the parakletos, and it has to do with the comforter. And that's the expression of the Holy Spirit. That is that divine intervention on your behalf to bring you an understanding that you can enter into this world of the cosmos of love, that it's not necessary to hold yourself back from reaping the abundance that comes with this whole manifestation of love, but that this universe of love has risen through opposition. And so in the story, Vishnu, he tells the Devas and the Asuras to churn the sea of milk. And so they grab the great serpent of eternity and start pulling on this. And through this, there's created Amrita, which is the nectar of immortality. And so both the two teams, the Devas, the shining ones, and the Asuras, the more earthly beings of will, that that they are struggling to try to be the last man standing, basically, at the end of the Manvantara. And so it's an image of that whole idea of reflection, of a mirroring, such as described in Plato's cave, where he says how we're looking at the shadow on the wall. We're not really seeing the reality. And so you see that the adversaries are these spiritual beings that have rejected the essence of creation, that sacred drop that has not been able to enter their heart, and so they are self-seeking, selfish, and totally working towards their own goals at the expense of everything else. And so that is what we want to realize, is that it's a path towards self-reference where you come to understand your place within the cosmos of love in perfect freedom.
Well said. Well said. I could use some Amrita right now, as a matter of fact. I love that Soma. But anyway, when you're talking about all this, we're going to have to break some things down before I get started, because I start making references to things that people go, oh, what's he talking about? First off, let's talk about where evil came from. And to do so, if you don't believe in the 9 hierarchies, the angels, archangels, archai, the exousiai, the dunamis, the karyotetes, or beings of form, movement, and wisdom. And then above them, the beings of willpower, harmony, and love, also called the thrones, the cherubim, and the seraphim. And above that is the Holy Trinity, the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, and maybe a feminine mirroring of that John just mentioned. So when you're working with that, when you hear the story, actually, this story isn't very well told in the Bible, but if you put together New Testament and the Apocalypse, then you get a bit of a version that says that there was a very high angel, the highest of angels, who was jealous, which of course is a sin. That is a vice. That isn't a virtue. And he wanted the power that God had, the all-seeing eye that no one could look at, that sat upon the powerful throne. And his jealousy led him to, in fact, warring against heaven. And it was the Archangel Michael, who we now call an Archai Michael because he's the time spirit. But the Archangel Michael was given a sword of power, according to the legends, and he used it to strike the stone from Lucifer's crown, which he had pridefully created out of substance. And he fell from the heavens, and Michael slid open the veil between heaven and material world, and Lucifer fell to the earth. Now, without that, we'd have no earth to come to existence on. As John said, we need evil to push up against to have consciousness, essentially. And so Lucifer falling, in some sense, seems as if it's the great sin. It's then applied to Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. They were told what not to do, and they did it supposedly, and then they were cast out into a material world where they had to face illness, suffering, death, childbirth, and have to earn their life through scratching the earth and trying to bring forth food. So what we have here is a story that means nothing unless you can find it in yourself. So is there a part of yourself that is so selfish that it would like to put itself above its own station and like to assume the throne of those that you think are above you? Well, if you don't admit to that, then you're probably not human, and that's good. Then you're an angel, and you can go ahead and ascend. Take your wings and fly. But most of us we are horrifyingly selfish. So in our thinking, and this is what we don't understand, and this is the basic anthroposophy, as basic as it gets, but without this, you can't understand anything at all about yourself or the world. You have thinking in your nerve sense system, feeling in your circulatory and blood system, and willing in your metabolic system. Those are 3 different aspects of you, but that's not where your I am is. Your ego, your I am consciousness, your individualized consciousness is everywhere. It is wherever you put your attention. So you can be in your thinking, and usually you'll say to somebody, well, what do you think about that? And they'll say, well, I feel that it's this and so. Or you say, what are you going to do about that? And they'll say, well, I think that I should. So they people don't even understand. You're a threefold being. And when you approach the spiritual world, if you don't have an integrated thinking, feeling, and willing based upon morality and love and goodness, as I said before, truth, beauty, and goodness, or faith, hope, and love, or wisdom, light, or faith, or truth is all wisdom. That's the being of Sophia. So if you don't have this and you approach the spiritual world, it's going to turn a mirror on you, and you're going to see what you think are evil demons. The Tibetans call it, when you die, in the intermediate realm, they'll call it the bardo, and they'll call these are they look like demons. They come after you. Who is that? That's you. That's all your unconsciousness and your thinking. How unconscious are you in your thinking? Here's how unconscious we all are. When you're having a thought, if it's a real thought, you didn't think it. An angel came through you and gave you a moral imagination. And if it's a true archetype that came from the spiritual world, it continues to exist and it isn't yours. So in the ancient world, they had a dim clairvoyance where when they had a thought, they knew it was outside of themselves. It wasn't in themselves. And so in that thinking, there is a being, Lucifer. But when you say Lucifer or Luciferic hosts, you mean all of the hierarchy, all 9 hierarchy have all either donated through suffering to give us what we used as our body or the ground to walk upon, the plants, the animals. Those are donations of the hierarchies. We had nothing, we had little to do with that except that we experienced it because those are also a part of us. But in the past, when you said you fell from heaven, it could also be that you donated, you were a hierarchical being who in the first half of Earth evolution, what Steiner calls the Mars half of Earth evolution, and then we're now in the Mercury half since the mystery of Golgotha. In that first Mars half, those are donations of spiritual beings. So you can't really say they're evil. They've been locked in time. They've been frozen in time. They've been enchanted in time as a suffering donated gift. And we are supposed to disenchant them. And when we don't, we participate in evil. So it's very hard to tell if you're clairvoyant, whether you're looking at something from the past that was a donation, or whether it's a more recent fall from grace that is literally an evil demonic being from the higher hierarchies as well as lower elemental kingdoms that wish to get into your body to experience for a moment humanness, because humanness can only happen here on earth. And these beings want to get into you. And so let's call it your left ear. You have Lucifer. And Lucifer is saying, no, don't be nice to them. Think of yourself first. Be selfish. Think of your gains. Plot out now through your greed what it is that you want to have so that you can be the king of the world, just like Lucifer thinks. On the other ear, the right ear, you have a being called Ahriman. And by the way, Lucifer works in your astral body. The first place you start when you start spiritual development is to tame the dragon in your astral body. And so what do we have as an image of Lucifer being cast down to heaven, out of heaven into the earth? Michael defeating the dragon. And what do we have these images also in Apocalypse, but you have to make a very clear distinction about what's of the past and what is now and of the future, because they look similar, but they can be quite different. So the first person we'll tell you about, this being who incarnated in China in 2000 BC approximately, is Lucifer, as the counterpoint to the incarnation of Ahriman, which we've discussed before in these videos here in North America, probably right now in our time. But in the middle was Christ. And so we are in the middle being torn in two by Lucifer and Ahriman, who wish to basically come into us and take over our humanness so that they themselves can experience that humanness in a basically a disorderly, in what Steiner calls a laggard type of way. They have fallen in many cases, and they are using us as their realm to manifest.
Yes, the key in understanding what we're discussing here is understanding that what we have is we call our I am, our I, which is often referred to as the ego, although it's not anything like the Freudian sense, but yet your individual nature, your point of self-reference. I am the I am. And that's something that is a gift of Christ. And he came here to earth as the from the highest levels of divine spiritual beings, the logos, which means we know from second logos that would be a reference to bearing a gift from the realm of the archangels. And that is the realm of the throat and the consecration, the realm of feeling. So we know that there's this, in the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was a God. So that is the key to unlocking the mystery of the Gospel of John in those first 14 verses. And that's very much akin to the pronouncement of Vishnu commanding the Devas and the Asuras to churn the sea of milk. It's you keep seeing this reoccurring drama, and if people, they might be uncomfortable in approaching some of the pre-Christian mysteries, but when you start to broaden your perspective on these things, you can see that there's this subtext that's going on beneath all of these various stories. And as Dr. Timothy Leary once said to me over dinner, I asked him what he thought about the Vedas. He said they're ontologically correct but pre-scientific. And I thought, boy, that's really a nice, clear way of describing it, because it's talking about the same thing, but it's not using the same nomenclature. It's not using the same words. But when we get to Rudolf Steiner's work, he has a very unique way of expressing things, because the goal of this grail path that we're discussing here is to be able to take the world of ideas and be able to broadcast it within our being, within the realm of moral imagination. That is, to be able to take it to the realm of pictures, to get it out of the just abstract conceptual realm. And so he continually approaches things from different vantage points, so that you don't just get locked into, oh, now I see, I have the definition and the final answer. And that's that whole idea of wanting closure that is the nemesis of the modern material science, because they always want to find the one law to rule them all, like in the Lord of the Rings. That's Sauron. He wants to be in charge. And it's funny because, like, I guess in the UK now, there's this movement to suppress the writings of J.R.R. Tolkien, and the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit and all that kind of stuff is being unwholesome guidance of some sort. So you see that there's this pushback from these powers of abstract domination that want to be able to create rules for every area of life. And that's Ahriman. Ahriman's job, he wants to create rules everywhere. Whereas Lucifer, he wants to be able to do whatever he wants, whenever he wants to do it. And so that's that licentiousness that you see in the world today. And so you have these two struggling against each other. And the real mystery of evil is the equilibrating point that is a gift of Christ. And that Christ isn't fighting evil. He's balancing evil. The evil forces of selfish light and unconscious darkness are struggling against each other. They're not struggling so much against Christ. In fact, they're oblivious to Christ. They're so caught up in their own version of reality that they don't find Christ until they see a human being able to manifest that Christ principle and bring them into equilibrium and push them back into the realms in which they should be in a wholesome version of the universe. And so there's a very interesting thing that is depicted in the Bible as putting on the armor of God.
Yes, everything you say just makes my thoughts go into a thousand directions of trying to explain exactly what we're trying to get across here, which is evil is very complex. There's no other question that I was ever asked more than the following: is there a permanent hell? What is evil? How do you overcome evil? Are we in the apocalypse? How do we survive the apocalypse? These are the major questions. The first 40 questions I'm asked as an anthroposophic teacher are these questions, not the details that John and I love to go into in cosmology. No, they want to know how, in a very simple way, how to fight this. So on your left is Lucifer, on your right is Ahriman, this Persian deity of darkness who fought against Ahura Mazda, though I've been told by Persians who chimed in to say, I'm giving a very elementary picture of that. But let's just say, let's go with Mani, uh, the founder of Manichaeism. He believed that we are in a battle between light and dark, just as John just pointed out. Well, Lucifer's light, Ahriman's dark. So on one ear is Lucifer, on the other is Ahriman, and Ahriman is telling you what? Oh, you should be afraid. You should be afraid of the future. You should be very anxious because you're not getting everything that you want. And he turns your heart cold. And basically, he's kind of like gravity. I've said this before, and people argue with me, but no, he is death. He is fear. And his great thing is to convince you through fear that after death, there's nothing. And once that's done, oh, then you don't believe in Christ, because Christ came and he conquered death, and his eternal gospel is the eternal gospel. You are eternal. And if you don't get that, you're going to be afraid of death. But once you get that, then when Ahriman says you're going to die, then I turn to Ahriman and say, yeah, the Tibetans say I'm supposed to think about the fact that I'm going to die 10 times a day, and it makes me much more grateful to be here right now. And Ahriman runs away. Or Lucifer says, why don't you work with stem cells and try to extend your life, or do the magic we taught you about the sequoia forest and create the elixir of life so you can live in a human body for a very long time? And or let's just take some DMT, the God particle, and just go out there and think that floating around in the etheric world is really something spiritual. That's what Lucifer will tell you. Now, for many years in anthroposophy, I never heard the word and never understood. Well, I heard the word, I never understood the word, what John just mentioned, the asuras. And you won't, I've never once, never, correct me if you have ever heard anyone besides us ever refer to the asuras in an anthroposophic way. No. Who are the asuras? Lucifer's in your thinking. Ahriman is in your head, literally the mirror of your head, which mirrors the thoughts that come from your heart. But anyway, Ahriman's in your heart. That's where fear and anxiety, he's trying to turn your heart into a cold stone. Lucifer is trying to turn your skull into his own kingdom, his own throne. So you sit up there in your head and you can condemn everyone. You are so powerful in your head that you can say, God, you don't exist, and be so stupid that you can believe it. Because that's not a thought when you said that, by the way. If you thought that was a thought, that's just what I was talking about before. That's not a thought. That's you being stupid. So we have the ability to have angelic thoughts. We have the ability to have archangelic feelings. And the archangels are willing to help us conquer Ahriman. The angels are willing to help us conquer Lucifer. Now remember, Lucifer is not just an angel. Lucifer is a conglomerate of all the beings who've ever fallen. And Ahriman is not just a demon who was created by materialism. He's not just a demon coming out of the sea with 7 heads and 10 horns in the apocalypse, who wears the 10 crowns. No, he's much more than that. Rudolf Steiner said that when you're talking about Ahriman, it would be fair to say that Ahriman is Mammon, and Mammon is a demon, a Babylonian demon of money that we all know of, but he's also the demon of child sacrifice, of envy, of jealousy, of hatred, of lust. When you combine all of them, that's what people would call Satan, or Mammon, or Mephistopheles, or many other names, right? So that's just like the dark demon, right? That's where everybody ends it. That's where they want to end it. You got Lucifer on the left, Ahriman on the right, talking to you, that's more than enough. No, the real evil is what a clairvoyant sees the second they see you. They don't see your thoughts because you usually don't have thoughts worthy to read. And they don't see your feelings because those are just blurting out everywhere anyway. And they send out all kinds of ugly colors in many cases, and or beautiful pink, a kind of a pink, rose-colored, magenta-colored light that comes from a loving person from their heart. When you see that, you just want to go drink it like from spring water. It's just amazing. And when you see clear thinking coming from somebody's head through their eyes or their voice, you understand their clear thinking. You can see into the spiritual world through them. You don't have to be a clairvoyant to understand what a clairvoyant tells you. You can use basically spiritual common sense to figure it out. But the deal is this, and I say this all the time, and people really get mad at me because why? They want to scream and pull out their hair and run away because I say to them the following: the asuras, beings that are even deeper than Ahriman, are in your willpower. And how do I know that? Because in the past, I could look at somebody and I could tell what they do as their worship, as their ritual. Now, if you're a materialist, what's your worship? Money. And you're usually in fear and anxiety that you don't have enough money and you're afraid you're going to die before you get what you want. Okay, so you are just a mess. So when someone looks at a materialist, it is an ugly looking, demonic, black-winged, multiple creatures all flying around them because you see what they do. What you do goes from life to life, not the pathetic little thoughts you have or your little measly feelings. But in your thinking, you can have moral imagination, and that goes from life to life. In your feeling, you can have moral inspiration. That's eternal. That goes from life to life. And in your will, you can have moral intuition. So when a psychic meets another psychic, their intuition is talking to each other, and there's no asuras getting in the way. Now, what is an asura? An asura is every unconscious deed you do to worship idols and demons that are in your life right now, whether it be your car, whether it be smoking, alcohol, drugs, whatever escapism, whatever debauchery, whatever of the 7 deadly sins you do, those are the asuras. And they are eating your I am. Now, someone got upset with me the other day and said, you can't eat the I am. I said, oh, yeah, you can. You can eat it till it doesn't exist anymore. But wait, then you said there's no permanent hell. There's no permanent hell, but there's the second lake of fire that happens in the, John can correct me on this, but in the Venus planetary incarnation of the Earth, the 6th planetary incarnation, in the, I'm going to use standard terms, 6th epoch and 6th sub-epoch. Unfortunately, those humans who fell back into being animals, and then they fell back into being plants, and then they fell back and they're still stuck in the mineral realm, when they get to the 666th point in the divine plan, they get thrown in that fiery lake, along with some other demons. Is that permanent hell? No. It will be redeemed as you go. You won't be able to go to the sun in the Vulcan incarnation, but when the new Manvantara starts, you start off again up the same ladder, but you start off as nature spirits. So there's really no evil. Lucifer and Ahriman will be redeemed. And it's shocking if I tell you who's going to redeem them. You'll say, that seems crazy. But it's not crazy. Lucifer will be redeemed by the Holy Spirit and Sophia. And Ahriman will be redeemed by Christ in your heart, but there's more to that. And the asuras will be redeemed by the Father God. But there is another demon that lives on the sun. He's called the sun demon. His name is Sorat or Soroth. He's the opposite of Christ. He's the true Antichrist. He's the solar Antichrist, a very high being. And he has fallen back in an evil fashion. And he wants to end all human evolution. And he wants to end all earth evolution. And that being hasn't come down to the earth, but he works through the asuras. But right now, the asuras work for Ahriman. But when all of your negative deeds can no longer be taken into the spiritual world. They go into the eighth sphere, which is a sphere where all the trash and the garbage, the refuse of all of these beings goes in between one great planetary incarnation and another. And so evil, when you describe it, you can't describe evil in a simple fashion. But as an exorcist, I can tell you that once working through Christ, someone asked me the day, how do you say you cast out demons? I never said I cast out demons. If you try yourself to cast out demons, you will probably become possessed by that demon. But what you cast them out with is the power of Christ, the name of Jesus Christ and the Father God. So as you work with getting these beings out of yourself, and we give a whole bunch of antidotes in this book, because we don't just tell you the evil. And in this book, Grappling with Evil, Conquering Fear and Anxiety, we tell you where all the real evil is. So if you didn't know this, it's going to shock you to read this book. I just got through reviewing the book, right? Yeah, yesterday and today. I am blown away. I cannot believe what all we put in here, but I want to blame that on my wife. That's the reason I got married, so I'd have someone to blame it on. But I'm blaming it on Tyler because she said you need to take all your work of 40 years and you need to put it in books that are small, that go topic after topic, that people can understand whether they're new to anthroposophy, but they have to be so deep that no matter how deep and how long someone has studied anthroposophy, your books, these books that John is helping so much to do and that Tyler and myself have put together, they need to give wisdom even for an initiate, because that's what Steiner gives. And by the way, I just want to say, I accept your compliment earlier, John, but I must defray it. I must give a scholastic apology. The only reason these books are so profound is because I take my stuff from Steiner. And then I do what Steiner says, go out and find in the world where all the spiritual science is being manifested in science and everywhere else, and bring it back and compare it. Because knowledge itself does not stand by itself. Knowledge stands in relationship to other knowledge. And until you have knowledge from 12 different points of view, you can't arrive at wisdom. So that's what we try to do in these books. We try to not only show you the deepest view of what you're going to have to do to grapple with evil, and you shouldn't grapple with evil, you should acknowledge evil. Grappling with evil is for people who are very high aspirants, initiates, and people who are like Mani. And by the way, we have the greatest spiritual beings incarnated now and the most evil beings incarnated right now that on the face of the earth. And so there's a battle for your soul, but it's everywhere, folks. And we're going to talk more about that in the next talk, but I'll just indicate that in one chapter in this book is called Electric Death. Now that sounds a little dramatic, but if you have read The Invisible Rainbow by Arthur Furstenberg, is it John, or Burstenstein?
Yeah, Furstenberg, I believe it is.
Yeah, Furstenberg. Yeah, he basically goes through and he shows you how every time that there's an advancement in electricity, wired electricity, unwired electricity, radar, wireless, satellite communication, 5G communication, every single time that electricity goes to the next step in its propagation, we have massive epidemics worldwide, or the places where it is found. And so we can go into the fact that Rudolf Steiner says all electricity is evil. Well, then what's the antidote to that? Well, the antidote is to take your poison in measure. If you take enough slowly snake poison, then when you get bit by a snake with that poison in it, you won't die. So if you're going to be exposed everywhere to evil, there are antidotes to it. And there's also a scary future that most anthroposophists that get to the level that John and I are talking about here, they'll tell you the scary parts that Steiner predicts for the future. But it's just like the apocalypse. They don't tell you the apocalypse is a victory story. This is a victory story, people.
Yes, it's The Invisible Rainbow, A History of Electricity and Life by Arthur Furstenberg, Firstenberg. And in there, he shows the pathological results from the introduction of new types of electronic technology that causing disruptions in the physical bodies of and psychological and how it's detrimental for human health. And he's very specific, and it's tremendous number of references. So you have all these things. You say, okay, great. I got all this stuff around me. Now you're telling me this is all bad for me. What am I supposed to do? And again, what we're trying to do is give you a sense of hope. That hope is really a key. That in the and you look at the story of the opening up the Pandora's box, right? That the one good thing that came out of it was hope, and so it's like, yeah, there is all that stuff, but that's all there for a reason. That's there to make you stronger. That's there to give you a capacity to function within realms that you would not be able to function in without the opposition. Because again, going back to what I was saying in reference to the Christ impulse, as Rudolf Steiner frequently refers to it, is that Christ is the manifestation of the macrocosmic I. And that's important to understand the distinction between the macrocosmic or greater universe, the greater universal I, and the individual or personal I, and the way in which there's a distinction between what the Christ impulse is and all these other beings that are surrounding us, because at the most they have a microcosmic I, and that you can come into relationship to these things. And that, like when Douglas was talking about how, well, if you really get into true thinking, then it means you're allowing the realm of the angels to be able to use you as a way to express these truths. Or if you look in the realm of feelings, then you're giving expression of the realm of the archangels. Or if you're doing the wholesome manifestation of moral intuition, the activation of the will, and with the moral resolve, then you're allowing yourself to be an expression of the realm of the archives. So that there's really these divine spiritual beings that are always there. They're always waiting for you to wake up out of your slumber, the sleep of prisoners, as Christopher Fry calls it. And it's really what it is. People are asleep. A lot of this, you used to know this stuff, by the way. A long time ago, you really did know it. You knew it quite well. But we go into this night of time in which we become these beings that think that we're creating all of our thoughts, and that our thoughts are all coming and they're originating inside our head, and somehow mysteriously all our memories are stored in our brain somehow with some kind of weird aspect of genetics or something. They just go and extrapolate all these conditions. They take the conditions and they try to make the conditions causes. And that's really where they screw it up. Because just because something is a condition doesn't mean that it was the cause of the fundamental basis of the condition. Although you could say, well, you are creating the world in which you're living by the state of your being. So you have there's a attendant relationship to it. Yes, of course, so you have that whole idea of dependent origination that they talk about in Tibetan Buddhism, so that there's things that arise. Well, they arise because something brought it into being. And what is that something? Is it real, or is it an illusion? And the whole idea of coming to understand spiritual science is to give you a language to where you can go into a deeper level of understanding of these things. And that is that anthroposophia. That is that divine wisdom that The more you can understand these things, the more potent is the ability of the Christ impulse able to work in your life. Now, you may just be an artist, so you may just do that as through your acts of artistic activity, playing music, making paintings, doing sculpture, whatever your approach is. But it's the whole idea of the sacralization of the ordinary, as our friend David Spangler used to call it. That there's this something about life that you can bring that added impulse. And that's that impulse that, by the way, is going to win in the end as we endure through this drama, because we ultimately are the redemption of these errant beings, that they only become sinful in the human realm. It's the capacity of mankind to be able to withhold their activity from unwholesome activity that brings about a transformation of these beings. So you essentially can redeem your part of the universe.
And as Steiner pointed out, the universe turned inside out is our heart, and that our physical body is the most magnificent thing created in the entire universe, and it is, in fact, an exact copy of the universe. So when we're saying that there are antidotes, here's how it kind of goes. In your thinking, you can conquer Lucifer through moral imagination, contacting the angels. Now, mankind, what does mankind do with that? They crystallize it, and they literally take the thoughts of the angels and they pull them to the earth in electricity, controlling electricity. And there's different ways to describe this, but essentially, as Steiner says, the earth will become completely electrified. Well, it already is, through HAARP, through billions, literally billions of radio waves that don't stop. They bounce off the ionosphere and keep bouncing around. You are being filled at any moment with unlimited, untold, huge amounts of electricity that is beaming through you. And then if you go into your heart, then you can, through moral inspiration, work with the archangels. But if you also, in a man-made way, take those same forces and pull them to the earth, that's called electromagnetism. Now, our modern age is basically through electromagnetism. But how many of us thank the beings who have fallen into matter to give us the light that we turn on at the switch, that give us the electricity that basically runs our life? Basically, we are taking fallen beings who, well, they're not even fallen, they're being pulled down into this realm and turned into slaves for us, and we don't thank any of them. We don't even know that it's happening. And then if you go even further, Steiner talked about a third force, and that's the third force in your willpower. So the human body in its willpower has the highest of the divine hierarchy involved in it, but we're completely unconscious of it. So we're awake in our thinking, we're asleep in our feeling, and we're dreaming in our feeling. I hope I said that. And then in our willpower, we're completely unconscious. We're in a trance. We are dreamless sleep. And most people are sleepwalkers, or they're talking in their sleep, their emotions, but they are not conscious. But if you become conscious of these things, then you can antidote them instantaneously by using your power of moral imagination, moral inspiration, moral intuition to know exactly what to do. So we're not saying to become Luddites and throw your cell phone in the pond. No, we're saying keep it away from you at all times unless you're using it. Put it on speakerphone. Don't ever put it next to your head. And realize that if you give it to a child, it will increase their likelihood of depression and suicidal ideation, if not suicide, by having it at too young of an age. We know these things. We've written about them, many articles, and they're in this book. We can tell you all the evil. We can tell you all the illnesses. We can tell you things that if I said them to you now, you would say I was lying. You'd have to go research them. But we can conquer the asuras. We can conquer these dark forces that are even worse than Ahriman and worse than materialism, because we are using dark forces to do our willpower. And what happens then? Our willpower atrophies. You give up your I am. Every time that you use a machine to do work for you, you just shortcut your own development. But if you do it consciously, then that's okay. For instance, I can give 1,000 examples, but coffee in the right place is a healing element, a healing for the body. But if you use it in the wrong way, it will kill you. It does direct chromosomal damage cumulatively from the first cup on. Okay, bad news. Use it for an enema, nothing's better. So evil can be used for good. And this is the part that people don't understand. And evil will be redeemed by the highest beings who are watching these demonic beings, fallen beings, and they are keeping them in check, keeping them in balance, just as John said. So the battle is in you. And if you become a materialist after you die, you will simply hang around the earth. You won't go out to the spheres, and you will re-crucify Christ in the living realm of the earth, and you'll crucify yourself. So what we're telling you here is consciousness is the key. Being conscious of what you feel, being conscious of what you do, being conscious of what you think, directing your thinking towards higher thinking, towards wisdom. These are all the antidotes to these things. And remembering that there is no such thing as evil that you cannot put behind you. And there's always, even during a cataclysm, there's a remnant. Because of your vibration, you don't exist in the same world as evil. It's as simple as that. The observer theory proves that. What you observe, you change the phenomena. Rudolf Steiner called it disenchanting matter. So you can change the illusion of matter, the delusion of matter. The evil is the delusion. Then there's the illusion. That's also Lucifer. But you can change that by what it is that you have inside of you as you look out upon things. So you can live in heaven or hell. That's up to you. You can be hanging out with demons or angels. That's up to you. The gates of hell have been opened. That's a fact. We see evil around us, but so have the gates of heaven. And these superhuman beings coming to us from Venus, Mercury, and Vulcan, which we've talked about, they're there. All these spiritual beings. When we talk about demons and stuff, let's talk about the angelic hosts. Let's talk about the choir of angels. Let's talk about the communion of saints. How about all the different beings who perfected different aspects of humanity that left it in that realm with Christ in the etheric realm? We have access to all of that. The antidote to evil is very simple. Evil is the word live spelled backwards. So when you're not living properly, you're doing something evil. What do you need to get rid of evil? You don't have to beat it up, conquer it. You simply have to do what Jacob did with the angel. Grapple with it, wrestle with it until the angel blessed him. So there's evil in you. Grapple with it, wrestle with it until you bless it. And then it has no power over you.
Yeah, as William Butler Yeats, the great Irish poet and high member of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, his magical name was Demonus Deus Inversus. The demon is God inverted. And so you look at that and you go back to the story I told in the beginning about the Vishnu instructing the Devas and the Asuras to churn the sea of milk and create the elixir of immortality. So what is that elixir of immortality? It's you. You are the Amrita. You are the Soma. It's that which is created through the sacralization of the ordinary in your life, that you can create sustenance for the divine spiritual beings. You become food of the gods. Your deeds become food of the gods because you are building the future cosmos that you will be born into. And that's the thing that people don't seem to grasp. Is they think they're just like a speck on some globe out with millions of universes, and it's insignificant. It's not insignificant at all. It is the most significant thing, that you are at the center of your universe. And if you want it to be a wonderful place to be, then have at it. Get started. You can start today. You don't have to get caught up with all the stuff that you didn't do. Why not just start now?